first Helix became a cult classic thanks to being described as a drug trip rather than as a video game. And after the popularity, we now have Helix 2, which is definitely a game, but also still kind of a drug trip. So our story takes place some point in the future, where the heroic Wayne, as you see there, who in the first game defeated the evil Moon Lord Gibby, has now been called on by the cult of Waynes, and their leader Big Wayne, Old Wayne, we gotta get these names right, to stop the resurrection of Gibby, which will possibly doom the world and everything as we know it. So, the game itself is made up of different gameplay systems. The two primary ones are going to be isometric platforming and this first-person or standard RPG or JRPG style system here. So, we'll start with the JRPG side since that's on the screen now. Combat in the game revolves around your party of 4, which you'll collect them very early into the game. And you're going to be making use of all manner of weird powers, abilities, some amazing gestures, as you see on screen right now, in order to defeat your enemies. Every encounter in Helix 2 is a fixed event, so the battles are all handmade. You will not run into anything random when it comes to that. Each enemy type has a bunch of very weird and unusual abilities that you'll have to deal with. One enemy can reform and transform or split into different copies, bosses can have crazy powers, and your party unlocks new spells through questing and finding TVs that reveal new gesture-style abilities. And again, just from the visual aesthetic alone, Helix 2 is certainly going to turn some heads. Now, the footage that you're seeing is taken from the very first version of the game, and I know the developer has released several balance and update patches since then. So what you see may not be 100% accurate in terms of abilities or how things work. And you are going to be challenged by a lot of the bosses in this game. There's definitely a focus on passives as well as being able to put on debuffs on characters. And some of my best strategies involve using the charge mechanic to upgrade or enhance each character's main spell to give them a little bit extra oomph when it comes to fighting. Now the other part of Helix 2 is the exploration, and you'll spend a lot of time moving around the map trying to find treasures, upgrades, and some of the hidden challenges the game has to offer. Now, there is no penalty when it comes to falling in the water or missing a jump. If you do fall in, you'll be warped back to the nearest piece of land. But it can be a little bit annoying to operate. Again, the isometric perspective does make things a little finicky when it comes to making jumps. As with the first game, you'll get access to your airship here, which will allow you to travel the various island chains. And the world itself, despite the 3D growth here, is vastly smaller compared to the first game. And if you know what you're doing, Helix 2 is probably just going to be a few hours long. With that said though, there is a lot to this game in terms of hidden secrets, as well as more challenges and things to find. As I said earlier, there are elements of this game that are going to be hidden and will let you access more rewards. The side-scrolling sections, and there's even a dungeon crawling area that is hidden near the end of the game. Now, though a lot of that stuff is optional, you are required to do at least, I believe, 1, maybe 2 side-scrolling sections. And your rewards will be more items and things you can use to equip to your characters. And when it comes to Helix 2 compared to the first game, it is definitely a lot grander compared to it. Not just in terms of how combat works, but in terms of more interactions with the map, as you see here. Now with that said though, does it make for a better game? That could be debatable. And we're going to talk about that next, but first, a quick break. And And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, link down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. Helix 2, as we've said, is a very unique game, and it is bigger than the first one, but with that bigger and more elements to it, so despite the fact that this is described as a drug experience, it's not as refined as the first game. Part of it has to do with how these elements are interacting with each other. When it comes to combat, the combat system is more involved, but it can also be more frustrating. Enemies have far more abilities and status effects than they did in the first game, and it doesn't really explain or give the player information in terms of how to mitigate that. In the first one, you had the ability known as Mystic Meat that would nullify any status elements for 3 turns. You don't get that power this time. And there is a larger focus on using items for recovery, status buffs or debuffs, and so on. And part of the other issue is that combat does take a little bit longer than I think it needs to. Some of that has to do with just how enemies can multiply and make things more troublesome, but also the fact that you have to wait for animations to finish. And as you've seen so far, some of these animations can take a very long time to go through. The game also has some issues when it comes to just general onboarding. This is a classic style RPG, so expect to have very little in terms of tutorials and having to talk to everyone just to learn essential tips and how things work. The enemies that you see on screen here keep multiplying. They are countered by using fire skills, and this was actually patched or updated after the game came out and after what you're seeing here. But again, it's that situation that you're going to fail because you don't really know anything, and then you'll see this very lovely / haunting scene right there. Now, there is no penalty on dying, and again, despite the difficulty increases, Helix 2 is still a game that you can kind of just push your way through. There's enough random encounters for you to get the items and such you need for upgrades, there's plenty of secrets, and there are, I'm sure at this point, advanced strategies that have been figured out. Some of the more annoying quality of life issues, such as how teleporters work, reclaiming your airship, I believe have been patched since this version of the game. So the developer has certainly been listening. Now, I did not like the side-scrolling sections, that it seemed like the second one turned into just a giant maze, and I'm still not sure how I managed to solve that one. But with this game, it is still definitely a drug experience masquerading as a game, and there are certainly more in terms of game here. And this is a case where the style is the substance, for sure. So, if what you've seen so far has you intrigued, then definitely check out Helix 1 and Helix 2. But if the thought of playing this very weird looking and very weirdly gameplay style game doesn't interest you in the slightest, then nothing is really going to change your mind in that regard. And I did end up ultimately enjoying the game, and I did finish it, and probably going to replay it again at some point just to see all the secrets and such that I missed, and also with the updates and patches. And with that said, that does it about for Helix 2. Again, there's not really any game that looks like this one, and while I think I did like kind of the overpoweredness of the first game, there is something more here to wrap your head around, or your moon-shaped head, or anything like that. Thanks for watching this review. If you'd like me to tackle your game in the future, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Helix 2, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.